So for our first sketchbook, we are going to use an A3 piece of paper, but you can use any size. I'm going to begin by folding it into quarters. Now you need to try and fold it into eighths, so take the top and the bottom and just fold them into the middle. Once this is done, you're going to need to cut a T shape. Use the fold lines as guidelines and make sure they're really neat and straight. Once you've finished cutting, what you need to do is basically go around all the fold lines and fold them back and forth to make sure that when you turn it into the concertina, they fit snugly. Finally, you should be able to simply fold it up into the concertina shape. And that is our first little sketchbook. Next sketchbook is again a concertina one. This one's a little bit more simple. You start with, again, I've got A3 paper, you can use whatever size, and you need to fold it in half and cut it lengthways. I've done this with 2 pieces of paper, so I've wound up with 4 sheets in total. What you need to do now with each sheet is just fold it in half. I've got 4, but you can do it with more. What you need to do now is you need to flip every other V shape so it's facing the opposite direction. This will make it much easier when you're attaching your sketchbook together. Now you need to glue the facing pages together. This is now your concertina sketchbook. You could work on both sides of the paper. You could add more sections in if you need more pages. To finish this one off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a front and a back cover. I've just got some nice coloured card cut to the right size, and I'm literally going to glue them on. Last sketchbook, this one is a stitch sketchbook. I'm just using normal printer A4 paper for this one. Again, you can use any kind of paper that you want. So take my A4 paper, fold it in half so I can get a centre line. On my actual sketchbook that I'm going to stitch, I've also added a front and back cover. It's just an A4 piece of card that I've clipped together to make it easier to sew. You're going to need to plot in your stitching holes, so you just need to divide your paper by 5 and pop 5 dots in. I think mine's about 3.5 centimetres apart. Before I start stitching, I'm going to use my needle and I'm going to poke through the holes because this will make it a lot easier whilst you're doing the sewing. I am using just regular thread, it's quite thin, so what I've done is doubled it up and tied a knot at the end. You're going to want to start with the middle hole, and you need to leave a little bit of thread hanging out because you'll knot this right at the end. Just take your time, double check that your thread's nice and neat. And I'm going to start by going right of the centre hole, so I'm just poking through the back. And I'm going to go right again, and I'm going to go to the top hole. This is called a saddle stitch. I'm going to go back through, so I've stitched on both sides. Checking that it's nice and neat. And I'm now going to start stitching to the left of the central hole, doing the front and the back. Again, checking all the way through that I've pulled it through and it's flat against the paper. I'm going to go through the central hole, and then when I'm on the other side, what I'm doing is I'm going to tie a little knot. So I'm going to slip my needle underneath the stitch. I'm going to bring it round and I'm going to tie a knot just to secure everything. And then I'm going to put my needle back through the middle hole, so I'm bringing it into the centre of the book. If you pull the needle firmly, the knot should follow you through and come into the middle of the book as well, like that. Finally, last thing to do, I'm going to tie a couple of knots with this bit of string that I left to make sure it's nice and secured. Trim off the excess. Remove my clips. And you should be left with a little stitched sketchbook.